Hey everyone, Matt Brady here, the Carolina Mortgage Coach. And on our next episode of Behind the Closing Table, I have Lloyd with Carolina Homes Connection. Me and Lloyd have worked together a few times, and he's a great agent and advocate for his clients. So, Lloyd, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Lloyd Hartman Trimble. I have been an agent at Carolina Homes Connection for about 6 years. Before that, I was one of the owners of R.W. Price and Associates out of Monroe, North Carolina. I've practiced real estate since 1999 and in the
Wow,
Carolinas since 2005.
awesome. Where were you before the Carolinas?
Um, Before the Carolinas, I grew up in Pennsylvania. I actually
Okay,
sold my parents' house my senior year of high school with an agent, but
okay.
that kind of got me started.
Got it in your blood then. Got you on it. And then what brought you guys down south?
My best friend from high school moved to Charlotte in 2001, and I moved to Virginia, and it was closer to come visit him, and the weather was better, so
Okay,
when I finished in Virginia, I just moved here.
nice. So now we know you got started, selling your parents' home. So what drove your business down here? How'd you get started down here, and what's that journey been?
So when I first moved to the Charlotte metro area, I was waiting tables,
Okay.
and a mortgage broker was a regular at the restaurant where I bartended.
Hmm.
And he worked for a small investment firm, and he said that they were always looking for agents. I told him
Yeah.
I had been an agent in Pennsylvania, but that through the course of relocation multiple times, my license had expired, but that I really would like to get back into the industry. He invited me to come speak with his broker at that
Okay.
firm, and I started there as an assistant, helped them with investor clients, and then worked there for a couple of years before they ultimately sold the firm.
Okay. Nice. And then did you go to Caroline Homes Connection after that, or did you have another stop?
So from there, I went to Keller Williams
Okay.
Realty, and I was at Keller Williams a while, I guess 2007 to maybe 2010, and then Richard Price and I started RW Price and Associates in 2011.
Okay. Nice.
That's
Well,
where.
Lloyd's one of the big dogs at Caroline Homes Connection. Always win awards, whether on the volume size or the unit side. So, with all your experience and everything, if I was to ask one of your past clients what makes Lloyd different, what would you hope that they said?
Well, I have a client that I actually met with this week, and
Okay.
I talked her out of buying a house.
Okay.
And we actually looked at 3, and I told her none of them were the right house for her.
Hmm.
And she told my husband, "That's exactly why we call Lloyd every time, because he has talked us out of buying more houses than he's talked us into buying." Anybody can sell a house,
Hmm.
but not everybody should buy what they're looking at. And to be willing to forego a sale for the buyer client's best interest is probably what makes me most unique.
Yeah.
Uh,
It really puts the person first and really gives you that trust, that isn't just the sale, that you're just not pushing them to do it. So that's awesome. What uh what would you say is something that people have a misconception about real estate life or being a real estate agent?
I think that people think that real estate is an easy job. People think that the Phil Dunphys of the world are out doing a couple hours of real estate while juggling life and a bunch of other things.
Hmm.
And it can happen that way, but
Yeah.
successful real estate agents work all the time. I
Yeah.
was at my computer working till about 11:30 last night and started responding to email at 5:30 this morning,
Oh yeah.
and that's a pretty typical day.
Yeah. The people don't understand all the hours of all the other stuff you're going through.
Right,
They just it's not all the glamour you see on social media and the journey you get those closing pictures with people.
right.
They don't understand the whole journey that you take. With that said, you deal with a lot of buyers and sellers. So what's one thing, or let's take it this route, what's a mistake you see buyers continuing to make over and over again, and maybe something you see when someone's selling their house, a mistake people make over and over again, or that you see come up, when you're doing your listing presentation or going through a buyer's appointment?
Well, for a buyer, I think the biggest thing is the market's a little different. Markets
Uh-huh.
change all the time, and people tend to wait. Or my favorite is they want to try to haggle and negotiate a better deal because they think they shouldn't pay the asking price.
Yeah.
The reality is that if the seller is paying attention and watching the market, they're going to price based on what the market will bear.
Uh-huh.
So, for example, I'm negotiating for a client right now,
Uh-huh.
and the seller's priced $50,000 below their closest comparable because they do have some condition items and they wanted to be aware of that.
Yeah.
The buyer doesn't feel like they're getting a deal. So we're we're not very far apart, but we're not there yet. And I think we'll get there because they have a good agent who's encouraging them and making them think about it and look at
Uh-huh.
those other sales. But people feel like they have to get something off for it to be a good deal. Well, it could be a good deal just on terms and not
Yeah.
necessarily on the movement of price. And it could be a good deal if the seller's already priced it aggressively.
Yeah.
Um,
And that goes down to like that conversation. It's like, it's different if they're paying cash, but if they're getting a mortgage, it's like every $10,000 changes the payment 65, $70. So, you know, what are what is the goal to get the deal? Like, how much are you looking to save? And then when they see the numbers like that, it's like you're not negotiating over 20,000, you're negotiating over $120. That's going to end up affecting your pocket.
right,
That's the conversation. So it's like I totally agree with that because I see it on my side too. Of I try to break it down to the how it affects your payment rather than you see the big numbers of the 20,000, but this is what that means to you on your monthly payment. And that hopefully sometimes that changes their conversations or open their eyes a little with it.
right.
What about on the listing side?
On the listing side, everything is worth what people paid for it. And it's not. My favorite are in-ground pools or
Yeah.
decks, but or docks on the lake. But the reality is even like that fancy patio furniture set that you bought in Uptown Charlotte has value,
Yeah.
but you don't want it anymore and you want the sellers to take it or you want the buyers to take it. You can't put too high a price on it
Yeah.
because they'll just tell you to pack it up and take it with you.
Yeah. What's one thing, since you brought it up, is there a renovation or something that people can do when they think about listing their house that actually does add value? Or what's something that people think does add value, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really move the needle?
Okay, so definitely kitchen and bathrooms are important, and you can do kitchen and bathrooms and see a return on those investments, but don't half do it. Don't
Okay.
do new countertops on 20-year-old cabinets that are builder grade because
Mhm.
the new countertops make the cabinets look even worse than they did. And
Mhm.
it's better to just get it as clean as possible and leave it for the buyer or do a whole new kitchen, but do it economically. If you
Yeah.
are doing a whole new kitchen, you can do remnant countertops to try to keep the cost down. Don't buy level 4 stone, but don't buy the cheapest stone you can find either. And I think that I go into old houses that have been freshly repainted, but they still have popcorn ceilings, and they painted the cabinetry and then they put quartz countertops in.
Yeah.
Well, the quartz countertops just make the old cabinets look really bad.
Okay. So definitely listen to your real estate agent. Don't go making changes until you have that conversation because you're not going to always get the dollar back and you may be spending stuff that doesn't really uh, matter. So, is there a deal that's almost fell apart that you had to go above and beyond to get to save the deal that would be a good story to tell?
Which one? So there always is something at the last minute, and
Yeah.
I think uh, people don't realize how much agents do behind the scenes,
Mhm.
and a good agent is gonna bridge a gap when there is something dumb that comes up. So
Yeah.
you get a home inspection, and the home inspector says something is broken or doesn't work, and the seller insists that it does, and the lender maybe dinged something else at the house. And at the end of the day, the sellers are willing to do some things. They might do
Yeah.
what the lender says, or they might do what the inspector says, but they probably don't want to do both. And the other agent and I have already got dozens of hours involved in the transaction and late night phone conversations, and
Yeah.
we're trying to make it work. Sold a house where even after working everything out, the sellers were still hung up on the total cost of sale. And so just trying to work through
Yeah.
those challenges. I've bought a refrigerator in the middle of the night because somebody took one that they weren't supposed to, or, you know, crazy things happen. But the key is to be flexible, to listen and accommodate your clients as best as possible. Um, and I sold a manufactured home recently, and the lender was requiring an engineer's report. Well, it's not a requirement of the county. It's not a requirement to retire title. It's just a requirement of this buyer's lender.
Mhm.
So some agents would say, okay, well, that's a buyer responsibility or the lender responsibility. And sometimes it should fall that way. But depending
Yeah.
on how the situation goes, if it's something that I can just make happen to make things easier for the buyer, then we do that. And
Yeah.
we do that because we want to make it a good experience for everybody.
Definitely. So there's a I was seeing a stat yesterday where like the overwhelming majority of real estate agents over the past year have either done 0 transactions or 1 to 4 transactions. The overwhelming amount. So I think it's really important at this day and time where, where the industry is there a question that you think someone should ask, whether they're a first-time home buyer or if you're looking to buy a house and you're interviewing agents? What's a good question to ask a buyer's agent that, can really separate the good ones from maybe the ones that need a little work? Or when you're listing your property, um, what's a question that you should ask the listing agent? Because you can all put them on the LMLS. You all can make a video like drone video. That's like common practice now. That's not something to really differentiate you from the next agent. What's something, what are the question on both sides that if you're interviewing an agent that you should be prepared to ask them?
I think when you're talking to agents, you should be prepared to see how they negotiate. How they
Hmm.
negotiate with you is the first test of how they're going to be able to negotiate in your transaction.
Right.
And if they agree to everything you ask for, either you're not asking for much or they don't value themselves adequately. If they
Hmm.
don't value themselves, then it's hard for them to value the transaction. With a seller, I think figuring out proximity. The reality is we
Hmm.
can't all put them in the MLS, and we rely on other agents to show our properties, but we also need to work in a location where we can service those listings.
Yeah.
And I cover a lot of ground. People say, "I can't believe you drive 40 to 50,000 miles in a year." And I said, "Well, that's where I work."
Yeah.
But some agents don't leave their neighborhood, and that's
Hmm.
okay. But if they don't leave their neighborhood, then make sure that if they're listing for you, they're listing in their neighborhood. Um, I, I, I think just knowledge of the area and how many
Hmm.
transactions they've done in that specific area. So, say for example, Indian Trail is a 45-minute drive for me now, but I still probably sell 10 houses in Indian Trail or Monroe in a year and
Hmm.
have sold probably close to 1,000 homes there over the last 20 years. So,
Yeah.
know the area, I know the streets, and I'm one of those nerdy people that remembers builders and floor plans. I drive into communities and I
There you go.
name of the house and who built it.
Yeah.
So those kinds of things are what set me apart. But I think every agent has a niche that they're really good at, and
Mhm,
every agent probably has a market. For a buyer, I think what's important is knowing how much the agent's willing to work for you,
mhm,
but also make sure that the agent understands that your acquisition is for you, not for
mhm.
them.
Yeah.
You said the statistic. Agents have unfortunately only sold one or two houses. I think there's somewhere around 80,000 agents in
Mhm,
the Carolinas, and 30,000 at best are really doing this work. So
mhm.
other people either have side jobs or side tasks, which is not necessarily a bad thing. That might mean that they're still learning, but they're going to give you their all
Yeah.
in scheduled parameters, and that's okay.
Mhm.
Um, but if they are worried about how they're going to put gas in their car to come to your home inspection, maybe this wasn't the right field, and maybe they're
Yeah.
not the best person for you.
Yeah. Now, the Carolinas is one of the top places that people are moving from, North and South Carolina. If someone was moving here from another state, what would you tell them?
Well, my I'm gonna steal my husband's favorite quote. No, the Charlotte metro area is roughly the same size in square miles as New York City. It's I want to say 311 square miles.
Mhm.
So we're roughly 1/10 the size of New York City. So when people start to say, well, it's so overpopulated or it's so crowded, we say we're less than a tenth of our capacity compared to New York City, and so we've got
Mhm,
lots of opportunity. Um, I also think that it's a great the biggest selling feature is that we're a couple hours from the mountains and a couple
mhm.
hours from the beach, so you can have both snow and the coast, but you're not in it every day. You don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to worry about hurricanes and blizzards too much. Um, and in general, the weather's pretty agreeable, and you've got 2 nice cities real close by, so you can go to Charlotte or Columbia for activities
Yeah.
with ease.
Yeah. One thing I tell people too is you have a major airport within 30 minutes of depending where you're at. You have the closest to a big city where the sporting events and always something going on in Charlotte with the different neighborhoods that you can be in. But then you have also two lake options to be out on the lake.
Six
Definitely. Oh yeah. There you go. And then you have Caraway, you have your little amusement park that you can, do some fun stuff in. When someone asks you, because I get this question a lot too, when someone asks you, well, what's the difference between North and South Carolina? What would you say?
Well, they are night and day different.
Uh-huh.
Even the forms that we use in the 2 states and just real estate law in general, negotiations and due diligence and all kinds of things are different between each state. I've lived in both, and there are perks to both. In North Carolina, your vehicle taxes are lower and your car insurance is a little bit lower. In South
Yeah.
Carolina, your car insurance is higher and your personal property tax is higher. But in South Carolina, your real estate taxes as an owner occupant are much better. Where
Mhm.
people run into trouble is they tend to look at South Carolina for investment properties, and taxes are 3 times as high on
Yeah.
investment. So it's
Yeah.
not a wise investment property, but North Carolina doesn't
Mhm.
control their investment properties. And so North Carolina, you have far more rentals in your neighborhoods. So there's trade-offs with that too. Again, it can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing. Um, in general, home prices in South Carolina tend to be a little more favorable. In general,
Mhm.
taxes making your monthly affordability a little better in South Carolina balance out. Sometimes people complain about schools, and most of the schools have seen good growth, and some of the top ranked schools
Mhm.
are larger class sizes and less one-on-one experiences than some of those lower ranked schools where the teachers really have a lot of heart. So
Yeah.
I think parents have to visit the schools and really
Yeah.
experience that for themselves. But at the end of the day, both have good value. The big thing is proximity to the things that you need, the
Mhm.
where you're going to work, the
Yeah.
airport, those kinds of things that you're going to go to every day. If I need to go to Indian Land, I'm gonna go once a week, so I don't care if it's I don't care if it's 45 minutes away, but I do want a grocery store that I can get to in a few
Oh
minutes,
yeah.
and most people do.
Yeah. Like I'm down in Lake Wiley and it's like you have to decide by 3:30 what side of the bridge you want to be on because it's not fun, especially when you're on a motorcycle to be sitting in that heat with the traffic. Like you don't have an AC blowing on you. So it's kind of like between 3:30 and 6:30, you got to decide which side of the bridge you want to be on. And then you're kind of stuck there.
Back in 2007, I sold 60 houses on a red motorcycle.
There you go.
It was very enjoyable, but it was hot, and
Oh yeah.
got tailgated for miles for no reason was the last time I drove that bike.
What so you have 20 years plus in the industry and there's a lot of newer people coming in the industry, whether it's from watching TV shows like Owning Manhattan or they see the social media stories and think it's, oh, you got a lot of free time, be your own boss. What would you say to someone getting into the real estate industry to that they really need to focus on to be successful? Because I'm sure you've seen people come in and take off like a rocket, and I'm sure you've seen some people come in and just wasn't the right fit. Oh,
Yeah, I've heard that the failure rate in this industry is close to 80%, and it's not really surprising.
uh-huh.
The big thing for somebody who's starting out is to know their sphere and know their market. Focus on one thing that you can do really well. So, working with buyers is typically the best way to start, and
Uh-huh.
knowing all the product available in your area. So, shopping all the builders and watching houses coming on the market in your neighborhood so that you can truly be the most knowledgeable person in your area where a buyer or a seller contacts you and wants to know what's going on in the neighborhood. You need to know that information so that you can rattle it off.
Yeah,
And again, you don't have to drive 40,000 miles. Just know your neighborhood so that you can work that sphere of influence and then grow from there.
yeah, definitely. Are you pro a new agent being going at it solo or joining a team?
I would think the success rate on a team is much higher. The
Okay.
reality is, eh, commissions are not as big as they ever seem,
Yeah,
and it's better to get a bunch of little chunks of commission than no commission. If you go solo, the road is very hard and you're very dependent upon your sphere of influence. So if you came from sales or marketing or something like that, then you might have a good sphere of influence that's um, in the marketplace for homes that you could help with. But if you're newer to the industry, joining a team so that you can market their listings, going to a firm that
hmm,
does training and has education opportunities, has accountability opportunities, learn to manage your schedule and make time slots and use
yeah,
them wisely. You can't always respond to everything exactly as it's happening because you'd never get through the backlog of the stuff that has to happen if
yeah,
you're just dealing with the fire instantly. So I think that being part of a team, learning to manage a schedule and time block and set appointments, even if those appointments are outside of real estate, that's still an appointment that needs a block in your calendar
yeah.
so that you can focus the rest of the time.
And I think one of the things I see, especially working with a lot of agents from the lending side, it's kind of like when I was a firefighter EMT. When you're in school, they teach you how to not get in trouble, but you really learn how to do the job when you're doing it. And I think a skill set you're not going to really learn in school would be how to handle negotiations that a team can help you with. Stuff comes up after the transaction or the once the contract gets signed, everything that goes into that, I feel like people underestimate all the work the real estate agent does after you sign the contract. I feel like they think, oh, the contract signed, it's the easy parts or the hard parts out of the way. No, that's usually outside of negotiation being, depending on how bad that is, there's a lot of things that can come up with inspections, ordering the right inspections. How you talked about, when the inspector report comes out, what really matters and what's something that you can deal with but shouldn't derail the transaction because of it. So I think that's another major thing of being part of a team. Um, so, you know, it's a it's a different market that we're in right now. If someone was thinking about buying or selling within this next year, what would be your piece of advice to them?
I think the most important thing is we still have a housing shortage. Even though there are more houses on the market, there are more people that should own houses than there are houses to be owned.
Mhm.
Affordability is a challenge, and that's one of the reasons why we looked into alternative housing options and different programs for people.
Uh-huh.
I do a lot of first time home buyer purchases, and a lot of my buyers use grant money or down payment
Uh-huh.
assistance, and those things do exist. I- If you move to the area and you think that you have to rent for $2,800 a month, you don't. You can
Mhm.
buy a house for 2,000 or $2,200 a month. You might drive a little further, but they do
Yeah.
exist, and that's okay. Mm, I also think getting off the fence and making the purchase sooner than later makes sense. Every month that you rent, you're throwing money away, you're paying your landlord's mortgage. I have rental houses, thank you for paying my mortgages. But I want my clients to buy houses. I offer my tenants houses from time to time. I offer to help them find houses, and I'm so happy when they do.
Yeah.
Not because I wanna lose them as tenants, but because I want them to own the American dream. Owning a
Yeah.
house is a privilege that our country was set up on, that our
Mhm.
forefathers and our ancestors worked really hard for, and we're seeing a shift to people saying, "I don't wanna have to deal with maintenance. I don't wanna be tied down. I wanna be able to move." Well, I get all of those things, but if you buy a house, then you have an asset. You have something that benefits you in your taxes and something that creates equity.
Yeah.
Houses have appreciated pretty consistently. I know the Charlotte News just said that house prices are going down, and they are adjusting a little. Sometimes adjustments are necessary because of outside influence. I do think that the number of investment-owned homes in the Charlotte metro area makes it challenging. Um, I think that buyers still are better off purchasing than they would be to rent, and every month that they wait, they're
Yeah.
paying somebody else's mortgage rather than their own.
And there is that one stat that you can't, there's no running away from. The net worth of a homeowner compared to a renter is 40 times, 40 or 42 times. And that comes down to having a forced savings account where if you pull back the curtain and it's something that you're going to live in for a while, home prices always go up. Now, there might be little dips here and there depending where you're at, but if you're get a real estate agent that knows the area that can guide you. Hey, this is a growing area. This is going to be a good investment. And it's not something you're looking to flip in a year. Most of the time, you're going to be okay. You have to pay for a house one way or another. Like you said, whether you're paying someone else's rent or at least your money's going somewhere as a homeowner. Um,
Yeah. I bought my first house at 18 years old, and I only lived in that house for a year, but I had a roommate who paid
yeah,
rent to me, which was about equivalent to the mortgage. And when I sold that house, I bought a bigger house, and he and his brother both rented from me and paid my
yeah,
mortgage for a while. So it was very nice. And I didn't make a ton of money on the sale of either of those houses, but I didn't lose money. And I
yeah,
sold them for very close to what I paid, which essentially means that I lived with no housing
yeah.
expense those 4 years.
Yeah. And your first house doesn't have to be the dream house that you're the end goal. But every home I've purchased, when I sold it, that provided my down payment for my next house that I wanted to buy. So, it was giving me that capital where I didn't have to go into a savings to pay for that next house. The next house paid for itself.
Right. And I think that the generations that are growing up today have seen what their parents have and think that they should be able to get kind of the same things
Yeah,
initially, but they don't remember what their parents started with.
yeah,
And it's okay that that first house does not have to be amazing. If you can buy a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom ranch that you can afford and the monthly payment is less than you're paying in rent, live there for a while. You'll gain equity, then you
mhm.
can sell it to buy something bigger and nicer. Way to move.
And it's yours, you can't undervalue that. Something that you can say is yours, you know? So, what is we've delved into a lot of real estate stuff. Outside of real estate, when you're not driving your 40,000 miles a year, what does Lloyd enjoy doing?
That's a great question.
Mhm.
I love my church and I love my
Okay.
church family and I enjoy being in service there. I actually went to school and got a degree in religion
Okay.
that I didn't feel like I could use right out of the gate. Probably figured this out, but I'm gay. And my um I I just struggled for a long time to figure
Uh-huh.
out that I could be both a Christian and gay, and
Uh-huh.
over the years of my life, I figured out now that that was preparing me, enabling me to be in the position that I'm in with my family. I help to take care of my parents and my sister and other relatives, and we just have been able to do a lot more things because of our situation. If we had a traditional nuclear family, I would be spread in different ways, not
Yeah.
necessarily bad, but just different. And I couldn't do the things that I really like. A couple weeks ago, we went on a mission trip into the North Carolina mountains and we provided access projects to people to
Oh,
help
nice.
them get in and out of their houses. And being able to take that time and really strengthen my own faith, but strengthen the faith of the youth of our church and
Uh-huh.
the other people in the community and get to help people, again, neighbors in their homes have better experiences. I think
Uh-huh.
people hesitate to buy homes because they're afraid that they won't be able to upkeep them, but there are resources out there
Yeah.
and people want to help you. When you're renting and the rents go up every year because everything else goes up every year, you just don't have any control and you still get to a point where you can't maintain it. At least if you own it, then you're in a better position. And
Yeah.
that would be my dream is that everybody own something.
That kinda leads to my next question, and I might know the answer. If you weren't in real estate, what would you be doing? Would you probably be a pastor if you weren't in the real estate?
I probably would. My sister
Uh-huh.
is an ordained pastor and I've been exploring the call. I guest preach and
Uh-huh.
enjoy it, and the last couple of times that I have, the words have come very easily, and I felt very encouraged, so trying to balance the scale
Yeah.
and make that part of my planned
Uh-huh.
future. I sing in the praise band, and I serve communion and coordinate that, but I would like to do more preaching. I would like to be a servant, and again, in this
Yeah.
industry, I feel like I'm a servant every day, but I'd like to be in servant leadership.
That's awesome. Well, I can vouch for a lot of what Lloyd has said. Me and Lloyd have worked together on a few deals and some deal, just the conversations I have with Lloyd's clients, I can go back to saying, yeah, I've had a lot of conversations with people that have rented from Lloyd and he goes above and beyond to try to get them into homes, even though he might lose them as a tenant. It really he walks the walk when he says he really just wants everyone to own something. Because I've had the conversations with the clients of how he goes above and beyond to put that together. So I can definitely vouch for that. So after this, if people really like your story and what do you have to say, what's the best way for someone to get in contact with you if they're interested in buying a home or putting their home for sale? What's the best way they can get in contact with you?
My phone's always on. It does not ring from 10 PM to 6 AM because otherwise it would. But call my phone, leave me a voicemail, send me a text message. Text messages are great, but leave me a voicemail too. Sometimes people hang up and then they send a text. Well, if I'm driving down the road and I listen to the text, then I have to try to remember to save it. So
Yeah.
feel free to leave a message. I don't mind, and I will call you back if you do. If you don't leave a message, I'm not going to call you because I get lots of calls. But my number is 704-345-3323. And my email is Lloyd at moveNCSC.com. So North Carolina, South Carolina.com. Those are the best ways to reach me. I check my email all the time,
Hmm.
several times throughout the day, and try to get it cleared out and caught up every day. And I check voicemail and I respond to text messages. Again, if you send one and I don't respond, send another.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks, Lloyd, for your time today. Lloyd's contact information will also be attached to this video, as well as his social media. So follow him, and you'll be able to connect with Lloyd that way. Thanks everyone for listening to another episode of Behind the Closing Table with Matt Brady, the Carolina Mortgage Coach, and we'll chat with you guys soon. Have a great day.
Thank you.